you've got questions, well, we have the man to answer those questions. Jeffrey Levine from Buckingham. Jeffrey, welcome back to another episode of Ask the Hammer.
Good to see you again, Bob.
Good to see you. I've got a question about something that's been in the news lately. What can you tell me about the SAVE program and whether I should use it?
So SAVE program is a new form of income-driven repayment option, or IDR. This is another way that you can pay back your student loans. Now, in most cases, this particular program is actually far superior to existing income-driven repayment options for a couple of reasons. One is the SAVE program says that a higher percentage of your income is non-discretionary. In other words, it's income that effectively Uncle Sam allots to you to use for things that you need, like food and shelter and clothing and so forth. And it says if you don't have more than this, then you don't have to pay anything. And it actually counts as a payment. Your $0 amount would count as a payment for you. The second thing is that based on the available discretionary income that you have, if any, so let's say you have $10,000 of income, and after looking at the formula for how much is discretionary, which looks at the federal poverty line income and your household, let's say that $4,000 of that amount was considered discretionary income. Well, the percentage of that discretionary income that can be used to pay down your student debt is lower with the SAVE program than with most other options. Now, does that mean that everyone should switch to the SAVE program? Of course not. There are always downsides, always exceptions. One of the biggest ones here would be for those with graduate level loans. Sometimes if you have graduate school loans, switching to the SAVE program might actually extend the length of those payments out compared to other programs. So it's one of those things where you really have to run the numbers and compare each particular option against the other one based on your particular loans, what you have, how far you are into the loans, and perhaps most importantly, what you believe your income today and in the future will look like. Because one of the biggest benefits of virtually all of these programs is that after a stated period of time, which can vary from program to program to program, any remaining debt you have is forgiven. And so the question becomes, which program requires you in many cases to pay less over the lifetime to have the balance, if possible, forgiven? Now, for some people with really high income, not going to matter because they're going to have to pay it all down no matter what. But especially for those with either modest or low income, then you definitely want to take advantage of whichever option you believe will create the lowest payments over the life of that time so that you can have the maximum amount forgiven at the end of the specified term.
Yeah, sounds like I need a calculator or an advisor to help me work through that one, right? It's hard to know in advance what.
I think both of those are really important. It's worth noting that there are specific courses that financial advisors can go through, or designations that advisors can seek that are specializing in just this area. It is a complicated area, just like retirement accounts have a bunch of different options. And, people say, well, how much is there to really know about retirement accounts? And yet could spend 2 days, and I often do, just talking about retirement accounts with folks. You can have the same thing on the education loan repayment side. It is a very, very technical thing. And the only thing I'd mention here is that when speaking or seeking out a professional to help with, if that's the route you're going to go, be sure you're looking at someone who specializes on kind of the back end, if you will, of college planning. To me, there's really 2 phases, right? There's what should you do to save and how do you pick the right school? And then there is the, hey, I needed to take loans to finish those payments. What is the best way for me to pay that back? Those are 2 separate specialties, if you will. You want to make sure whoever you're working with has knowledge in those areas.
Yeah. 2 final thoughts. One is I've never used it, but on studentaid.gov, there is a calculator that helps you model the different plans with your specific loan, debt, and expected income.
Yeah, there are several really good calculators available online that people can use. The problem I sometimes find is people don't know what inputs to put in them, right? It's confusing. And just like most other systems, it's a garbage in, garbage out result, right? If you're not putting in the right things because you don't really understand what counts as income for you versus what doesn't, or exactly which loans qualify for the programs versus which loans don't, then you're going to get an answer that doesn't actually reflect your true reality. So again, some people, they're going to be inclined to do this on their own, and great. And there's lots of free calculators out there you should take advantage of and do run those numbers, because there's really no other substitute for doing that. And for a lot of other folks, it pays to sit down with a professional who has some specialized knowledge in this area, because if you're looking at paying back loans over a 20, or in some cases even longer period of time, doing a little bit of homework upfront to make the next 20 plus years of your life go a little bit smoother, in my opinion at least, is worth it.
Yeah. So one final question you mentioned.
You already said that. How many final questions do you want?
I actually said two more questions.
Oh, okay. All right. Two more questions.
So
okay.
I still had one in the bank.
All right.
So you mentioned that loans can be forgiven after a certain period of time, 10 years perhaps, or whatever, for longer for others. These tax liabilities, when there's a tax liability when the loan is forgiven?
Today, the answer is no. Now, that relief, if you will, the tax-free nature of that student debt forgiveness is set to expire here in a few years. But there are lots of discussions being had about perhaps extending that. And certainly it's something that's going to be ripe for debate here over the coming years. So I would say today, the answer is no. Stay tuned as to what the future holds. It's unclear what that will look like down the road. And you mentioned 10 years, 20 years. Under the SAVE program, for most people, this would be a 20-year repayment cycle. If you had a very modest amount of cumulative loans that were you enrolling into this program, then that could be 10 years. And if you have graduate debt, then that can take you a little bit further out to 25 years. But for most people, when we're talking about just their regular undergraduate debt, they should expect a 20-year payment cycle for those.
Well, I, for one, am eternally indebted to you for answering that question.
Well, you know what? I hope our readers are as well. And if they'd like to repay us, which is actually another one of our IDR programs, or save us the time from having to go out and look for more questions ourselves, then you can send them to us. We'd love to hear from you. So give us a shout at askthehammer@buckinghamgroup.com. Again, that's askthehammer@buckinghamgroup.com. And Bob and I look forward to seeing your questions in our inbox real soon.